Okay, here we are on the hardwired buying process, cooperating with God's design. It's amazing to me how people will ignore what the way God made things, and they'll ignore natural processes and try in their own genius to circumvent the way things are meant to be, the way God wired it, and try to basically create another path. And it doesn't mean they don't have some success, but you're never going to do as well running against the grain as Saul, who later became Paul, found out. But you are going to do well when you learn how to go with the grain. And this is what this is all about, is that it's a psychological buying process, if you will. It's what's modeled inside the inner court of the tabernacle of Moses. But I saw it there, and I actually first learned of the pattern earlier than this, but then I started to see it inside the tabernacle. I was, oh my goodness, this is there. And so here's what it is. This is a process. If you're smart, you'll bring people through this process when introducing them to your product. And so let me take you inside this a little bit. The first thing on the bottom there, you'll see curiosity. When you go inside the tabernacle of Moses, the first thing you see when you go inside the inner court, remember it's dark, there's no lights except for this beautiful golden lampstand lit. And so there's a table with bread and there's an altar of incense, but the first thing you're going to see is this lampstand. And it's like, my goodness, what does that mean? What's that all about? And it's 7 branches and it's magnificent. And so it's natural to be curious. Well, so what does that translate into sales? Well, you want to say, if you're in a sales call, for example, marketing is one thing. You'll do different things in marketing. I remember a commercial years ago used to say, when is a diet pill worth $150? Or a bottle of diet pills worth $150? And you go, huh? And then they'd say, when it works. Now they were using question, which is very powerful, and they arouse curiosity, which works. And then that causes you to go to the investigation stage and so on. But in my business, I might say something like, are you interested in multiplying your sales without having to work 10 times harder or compromise your values? Or perhaps I might say, without having to sacrifice your family. You know, people think if they want to get double the result or 10 times the result or whatever, that they're going to have to work 10 times harder and it's going to cost them. And they think, well, maybe that's worth it. Well, I can show you that I've done the 10x is one thing, but I can go 30x, 100x, 60x, whatever. And I can do that without having to sacrifice family, without having to sacrifice things that are very meaningful. And that's what we show. So part of people will say, wait a minute, you can do that. You've got my interest. Now I have another session where I teach specifically how to do that, based on the 7 branches of the candlestick, but I'll move on from that right now. The thing is that the lampstand causes you to be interested and say, okay, I want to know more. And so it causes you to gain interest and seek investigation. Curiosity always seeks investigation. So when you're in a sales situation, the first thing you want to do is, I need to gain their interest, attract their interest, attract their curiosity, if you will. That will lead to, investigation. Now, the next thing you see inside that inner court is this table of bread, and there's 12 loaves. We'll get into that in a second. But the thing that, before you ever get to taste the bread, is you smell something. It's called frankincense, because it seemed odd to me, but this is what they were told to do, is they had to sprinkle frankincense on top of the bread, which sat there for a week, and then they would eat it. And so the fragrance would fill the room and all that good stuff. But I looked at the scientific properties of frankincense. And there's a lot of things that it does, and those of you who are into this type of thing can certainly list more than I have here, but I picked out a few that I read about that relate to sales. And one of them is it reduces stress and it reduces negativity in a person, and it promotes enlightenment and also stimulates the memory. Now, I'm not suggesting, just to be real clear, that on your next sales call, you start burning frankincense. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I am saying, well, what is there in the psychological environment that would stimulate those things, that would reduce stress, reduce negativity, promote enlightenment and memory? What things would do that? Well, those things would be actually questions. And asking the right questions, what it does is, when you start asking questions, it causes people, generally speaking, they get to do the talking. And when they're talking, they're a lot more comfortable. If somebody has to sit across from you while you make a 45-minute presentation without any interaction, and you're in the same room together, That can be uncomfortable. It's different on a webinar to some extent because we're all doing this remotely, but in a face-to-face meeting, that's not so comfortable. So one of the ways to reduce stress is take an interest in the other party and ask questions. And there's data which I get into in my training that actually has measured this in a percentage in terms of how it reduces negativity, stress, etc. Anyway, fascinating stuff. So you're going to get the frankincense. The investigation phase is where you're going to arouse even more interest. They're curious, and now you've stimulated them. You've stimulated their desire, if you will, and that brings you to the third step, desire. And using the lessons from the 12 loaves, you get to present your case and secure their desire. In other words, you're going to go from curiosity, which seeks investigation, and your investigation says, oh, tell me more, and it takes you to desire. Okay? You've got to get somebody from curiosity to desire. You got to get them from the curiosity step, which is left brain, linear thinking, logical thinking. Oh, that's interesting. What is that? That's intellectual. To the desire, which is the heart or the limbic system or the right brain. And you need to move them through that. And the intermediate step is the investigation phase. You learn about them, they learn about you. It's a good thing. And then you get into the desire. And now, how do you know you've got desire? Or what is the way to create desire? Well, in, of course, the training, we get into a big in-depth thing, but I will give you a couple of examples. The 12 loaves that were there, that's not a happenstance number. It represents the 12 tribes of Israel. And interestingly, if you didn't know this, if you take the etymology or the root meaning of the 7 tribal names, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and so forth, you go through them and you do it in their birth order, and you get the Hebrew meaning of the word and put it in English. It actually strings together a very, very powerful and motivational message. We get into that in our training too. It's amazing what it does. I mean, it's one of my favorite topics, is the bread of his presence. But for this sake, I'll just give you a couple examples. The firstborn was Reuben, which means to see. So one of the things you want to accomplish to arouse desire in somebody, so they now want what you have, not just intellectually curious, is you want them to see. And that's both literal and figurative. So for example, if you have a physical product, rather than just send them a brochure or talk to them about it or try to describe it, if you have something physical, it's always better for them to see it, to be there. Believe me, when I went to the Grand Canyon for the first time, I'd seen lots of pictures of it. But when I went there, it was indescribable to me. It's like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. It blew my mind. The difference between seeing it or seeing a representation. So whenever possible, you want them to see it. In fact, back in the 60s, Xerox introduced their very first portable copier. It was called the Xerox 660. And they found out that salespeople who went to the trouble, it was clunky, it was big, it wasn't like today, but it was what it was. But the salespeople who actually went to the trouble of taking that copier and having it delivered to an office for them to try out, and they went to a lot of difficulty, which slowed them down a little bit, but the prospects were 5 times more likely to buy than those who didn't physically see the copier. In fact, a friend of mine who worked for Xerox was the #1 salesman for Xerox of Canada for an entire year, Jerry Price, a mentor and a dear brother and a friend of mine. Jerry told me that he, when he won that award, one of the things he did is he bought a motorhome and he put a variety of copiers inside his motorhome, set it up as an office, and he would drive to prospects' places and bring them out to the motorhome and show them and demonstrate the equipment so they could see it, because he knew you could create the desire if somebody could see what you're talking about. And by the way, if it's an intangible product, you're thinking, well, my product's not a physical thing, it's a service or something else. Well, that's fine. You still want to be able to illustrate that. So, Jesus did that all the time. The kingdom of God is like this, or it's like a man who went out and planted wheat and somebody sowed tares, or it's like a coin, or it's like a pearl of great price, or it's, there's all kinds of illustrations. And what Jesus would do was use word pictures. So whenever possible, when you're selling an intangible, if you want to create desire in somebody, you want to make sure that you paint a picture on the canvas of their heart or their limbic system or their right brain, if I can say that again. And so you want to paint a good word picture. I may go a step further if possible. You see I see commercials for cars, for example. They show the car, but then they also show people having fun, driving through the mountains, going through wherever, and they show people that are very happy. And so they basically equate my product with your happiness. You get those two together, you'll be happy. And so they show it visually. Okay, that's the Reuben effect. And there's more to it than that, but that's a good one. The next thing that follows, the next son that was born, was Simeon, which means to hear. So now you have show, Reuben, and tell, Simeon. Show and tell to sell is what they used to say, and it's true. So now I want to communicate verbally, and I want them to hear what I'm saying. And of course, if you're going to tell, you're using words, and the Greek word for word, one of them, is logos, from which we get our word logic. And so what we want to be able to do in our presentation is we want to make sure they see it, and that's also understanding, to see with the eyes of their heart as well as with their their physical eyes, and to understand it and to hear, to receive that message and to get it, and for you to use well-chosen words to describe the benefits and so on relative to your product. Now I'm kind of going through this quickly. There's 10 other sons of Jacob, 10 other sons that all represent things that you want to accomplish and do in your sales presentation that'll help them have a strong desire. Because once they have desire, the interesting thing about desire is desire then switches over and demands or insists upon justification. Now, we see that represented by the altar of incense in the tabernacle, in the inner court. And now you see the three items that are there, the candlestick, the bread, and now the altar of incense, which, again, this is a longer thing, but this speaks of wisdom. It also speaks of the prayers of the saints and so forth. But in the training, I expand on the fact that there are 4 different ingredients that were being offered. And those 4 different things actually speak to the idea of bringing the heart to wisdom. Okay, and I can't get into it now for time's sake, but I'll just tell you this. When you go from curiosity, hey, I'm curious, to let me check that out. That's investigation, to desire. Oh, now I want it. But then the next step is they're looking for justification. Like, they want it. I was on a call yesterday with somebody, and he was telling me all about this several $1,000 camera. I could see he just wanted it more than he wanted his next breath. He was so excited. And I watched it. He'd gotten curious. He investigated. Now he saw different things, and he wants it. And so now the next thing is he starts to justify it. Well, here's the reason why this is important. And it was valid justification, by the way. And so what you want to be able to do for somebody that you're making a sale to is get them from curiosity to investigation to desire to justification. Give them the wisdom. Bring their heart to wisdom. Okay? That actually helps them in the decision process. Now, when you've done that, justification demands fulfillment. Okay, now that I've justified this thing, I want it. And so you want to go from the justification stage over to the fulfillment, which is represented by the Ark of the Covenant, which is where the elements of the deal are written in stone beside the goods. You'll see inside the Ark of the Covenant with the 10 Commandments. Think of that as a contract. Beside the contract was the manna. Think of that as the goods being offered or exchanged. It's provision is what it is. And then they want permanence, which was the mercy seat, which was sealed irrevocably with the blood of Christ. See, folks want lasting relationships. They want something that's lasting. And so you want to make sure that when you're in a presentation, you want to be able to show somebody this is going to last. It's not going to be, sort of here today and gone tomorrow. It's going to last for as long as they need it to last, or as long as can be expected, and as much as you're able to give permanence. So if you walk through these 6 steps, curiosity, investigation, desire, when you get that desire thing going, boy, and see so many salespeople, they skip the desire stage altogether. They go from curiosity to justification. They go straight into a left brain presentation. Here's all the reasons. 2 + 2 = 4. But the prospect doesn't have the desire. And then you didn't learn even how to awaken that desire because you didn't do the investigation. So that's the overview. I hope you like this. If you want to go deeper and change your life, build your business, grow your sales, improve your revenues significantly, I'm inviting you to enjoy a complimentary 1-hour in-depth lesson that reveals the 7 ancient paths that are found in the Moses Blueprint for success in sales and business. And on those paths, you'll learn about the Moses questioning strategy, the negotiating secrets of Paul, the easy close sales process, and a whole lot more. So if you'd like to learn that and see how can you apply God's Word and specifically the Moses Blueprint to your career and to your business, I invite you right now, scroll down. You can watch a short video that's going to show you what you're going to learn, and then press the green button here to access the blueprint and learn all about it. All right, friends, thank you so much. God bless you. You're going to love it.